When he declares that an axiom is a matter of arbitrary choice, and he doesn't choose to accept the axiom that he exists, he blanks out the fact that he has accepted it by uttering that sentence, that the only way to reject it is to shut one's mouth, expound no theories, and die. An axiom is a statement that identifies the base of knowledge and of any further statement pertaining to that knowledge, a statement necessarily contained in all others, whether any particular speaker chooses to identify it or not. An axiom is a proposition that defeats its opponents by the fact that they have to accept it and use it in the process of any attempt to deny it. Let the caveman who does not choose to accept the axiom of identity try to present his theory without using the concept of identity or any concept derived from it. Let the anthropoid who does not choose to accept the existence of nouns try to devise a language without nouns, adjectives, or verbs. Let the witch doctor who does not choose to accept the validity of sensory perception try to prove it without using the data he obtained by sensory perception. Let the headhunter who does not choose to accept the validity of logic try to prove it without using logic. Let the pygmy who proclaims that a skyscraper needs no foundation after it reaches its 50th story yank the base from under his building, not yours. Let the cannibal who snarls that the freedom of man's mind was needed to create an industrial civilization, but is not needed to maintain it, be given an arrowhead and bearskin, not a university chair of economics. Do you think they are taking you back to dark ages? They are taking you back to darker ages than any your history has known. Their goal is not the era of pre-science, but the era of pre-language. Their purpose is to deprive you of the concept on which man's mind, his life, and his culture depend, the concept of an objective reality. Identify the development of a human consciousness, and you will know the purpose of their creed. A savage is a being who has not grasped that A is A, and that reality is real. He has arrested his mind at the level of a baby's, at the stage when a consciousness acquires its initial sensory perceptions, and has not learned to distinguish solid objects. It is to a baby that the world appears as a blur of motion, without things that move, and the birth of his mind is the day when he grasps that the streak that keeps flickering past him is his mother, and the world beyond her is a curtain, and that the two are solid entities, and neither can turn into the other, that they are what they are, that they exist. The day when he grasps that matter has no volition is the day when he grasps that he has, and this is his birth as a human being. The day when he grasps that the reflection he sees in a mirror is not a delusion, that it is real, but it is not himself, that the mirage he sees in a desert is not a delusion, that the air and the light rays that cause it are real, but it is not a city, it is a city's reflection. The day when he grasps that he is not a passive recipient of the sensations of any given moment, that his senses do not provide him with automatic knowledge in separate snatches independent of context, but only with the material of knowledge which his mind must learn to integrate. The day when he grasps that his senses cannot deceive him, that physical objects cannot act without causes, that his organs of perception are physical and have no volition, no power to invent or to distort, that the evidence they give him is an absolute, but his mind must learn to understand it. His mind must discover the nature, the causes, the full context of his sensory material. The mind must identify the things that he perceives. That is the day of his birth as a thinker and scientist. We are the men who reach that day. You are the men who choose to reach it partly. A savage is a man who never does. To a savage, the world is a place of unintelligible miracles, where anything is possible to inanimate matter, and nothing is possible to him. His world is not the unknown, but that irrational horror, the unknowable. He believes that physical objects are endowed with a mysterious volition, moved by causeless, unpredictable whims, while he is a helpless pawn at the mercy of forces beyond his control. He believes that nature is ruled by demons who possess an omnipotent power, and that reality is their fluid plaything where they can turn his bowl of meal into a snake and his wife into a beetle at any moment, where the A he has never discovered, can be any non-A they choose, where the only knowledge he possesses is that he must not attempt to know. He can count on nothing. He can only wish. And he spends his life on wishing, on begging his demons to grant him his wishes by the arbitrary power of their will, giving them credit when they do, taking the blame when they don't, offering them sacrifices in token of his gratitude, and sacrifices in token of his guilt, crawling on his belly in fear and worship of sun and moon and wind and rain, and of any thug who announces himself as their spokesman, provided his words are unintelligible, and his mask sufficiently frightening. He wishes, begs, and crawls, and dies, leaving you as a record of his view of existence, the distorted monstrosities of his idols, part man, part animal, part spider, the embodiments of the world of non-A. His is the intellectual state of your modern teachers, and his is the world to which they want to bring you. If you wonder by what means they propose to do it, walk into any college classroom and you will hear your professors teaching your children that man can be certain of nothing, that his consciousness has no validity whatever, that he can learn no facts and no laws of existence, that he's incapable of knowing an objective reality. What then is his standard of knowledge and truth? Whatever others believe is their answer. There is no knowledge, they teach, there's only faith. Your belief that you exist is an act of faith, no more valid than another's faith in his right to kill you. The axioms of science are an act of faith, no more valid than a mystic's faith in revelations. The belief that electric light can be produced by a generator is an act of faith, no more valid than the belief that it can be produced by a rabbit's foot kissed under a stepladder on the first of the moon. Truth is whatever people want it to be, and people are everyone except yourself. Reality is whatever people choose to say it is. There are no objective facts. There are only people's arbitrary wishes. A man who seeks knowledge in a laboratory by means of test tubes and logic is an old-fashioned, superstitious fool. A true scientist is a man who goes around taking public polls. And if it weren't for the selfish greed of the manufacturers of steel girders, who have a vested interest in obstructing the progress of science, you would learn that New York City does not exist, because a poll of the entire population of the world would tell you by a landslide majority that their beliefs forbid its existence. For centuries, the mystics of spirit have proclaimed that faith is superior to reason, but have not dared deny the existence of reason. Their heirs and product, the mystics of muscle, have completed their job and achieved their dream. They proclaim that everything is faith, and call it a revolt against believing. As revolt against unproved assertions, they proclaim that nothing can be proved. As revolt against supernatural knowledge, they proclaim that no knowledge is possible. As revolt against the enemies of science, they proclaim that science is superstition. As revolt against the enslavement of the mind, they proclaim that there is no mind. If you surrender your power to perceive, if you accept the switch of your standard from the objective to the collective, and wait for mankind to tell you what to think, you will find another switch taking place before the eyes you have renounced. You will find that your teachers become the rulers of the collective, and if you then refuse to obey them, protesting that they are not the whole of mankind, they will answer, "By what means do you know that we are not?" Are, brother? Where did you get that old-fashioned term?